All right, so we're gonna get started now. Had some technical difficulties on the link. Was trying to put everybody in the backstage, which is kind of funny. So I just swapped that up. But we are live. We are rolling. I am stoked to be here. I love this topic. I love creative finance, and I love everything you can do with it. And especially when you sell or finance something out, I love the returns that you can get every month without the maintenance and all that kind of stuff. So without further ado, I will get started. And if you guys have any questions whatsoever, actually, before we get started, I want to make sure, can everybody hear me okay? And please just throw it in the chat, throw a thumbs up or something. I just want to make sure that uh, with these headphones, you guys can hear me. Please let me know, throw it in the chat, shoot me a text, something would be amazing. Let's see here. Let's see. Come on. Let me know. Good. Thanks, Lev. Appreciate you. All right. Sweet. So after this, ideally, your awareness for creative finance and how you can do deals is going to be massive. We're going to go through some stuff that we've done, stuff that we've looked at, stuff that we've heard about. I've been called on things like brainstorm, and usually it's like I don't know where to start. That's the biggest, the biggest thing I get is I don't know where to start, and I have no idea if this is a decent deal. Will it cash flow? So we're gonna go through some stuff that I've done, but before we do, just who am I? So if you're watching this, like most people know who I am, and I know most of the people watching this. But if you don't know who I am, I'm Kyle Fugit. We have a short-term rental management company called Cherokee Rose Homes. We own the Mallard Hotel, which we bought creatively. And I come from the electrical world. So I was an electrical engineer for many years, and I worked the W-2. And in 2019, I bought my first rental. So me and Allie bought a rental together, and I'll actually talk about that. That's here. But bought our first rental in 2019. Didn't know what we were doing. It was a kind of a creative deal with some hard money. 2020, we bird out of that deal and we bought some other rentals and we started doing flips. And so we got into single family rentals, and I've got some creative stuff there that again we will talk about. Following year 2021, we did flips and we started our management company, got into the short term rental space. 22, we bought the hotel, the Mallard Hotel, which we'll talk about. We bought creatively. And I quit my W-2. So Allie had already quit. And then I quit my W-2 because we were just doing short term rentals. And that provided the cash flow for both of us to be able to walk away. And in 2023, we rehabbed and fully launched the hotel. So we'll talk about this, but I come from the W-2. Like I come from where a lot of people are. I come from, I went to school for 7 years. You can see here, I went to school for 7 years for a 4 year degree, had Riley. We bought a house. I mean, we are doing all the things. So a lot of people that are going through that, they're still working the W-2 and they're still like struggling, trying to get through, what are they going to do next? How are they going to quit? Like real estate, 100%, short-term rentals, long-term, whatever, multifamily flips, it will get you there. You just have to figure out what you want to do. So, and if you guys have questions, please throw them in the chat. I don't look at my phone, so don't text me. Not during this, so just throw it in the chat. There's a little bit of a delay, so I'll try to hit it as we go. So these are 3 real deals that we've done, and you can look these addresses up. So in our first deal, this is 1566 Old Alabama Road. I personally owned that deal. We've sold it since, but that's in Austell, Georgia. If you want to look that up and you looked at the tax records, you would see that we physically owned that property at one point. Bought it for $50K. It was my grandfather's house. It was my great grandparents' house. My grandfather said, "Look, this is my only, retirement. This is my only inheritance. I'll cut you a little bit of a deal, but I still need $50K." I said, "Okay." So we went to go through and try to purchase this thing. Last minute, couldn't get regular financing on it. Shifted to what I had no idea what hard money was. Had no idea. Learned really quickly what hard money was. We used a group out of Atlanta. We don't work with them anymore. We used a group out of Atlanta, and we technically bird it. So we bought it, we rehabbed it. I did everything except like I personally did everything. First property, YouTube certified flipper, if you want to call it, whatever. The only things we didn't do was like the granite, things that we actually had to sub out. Granite, gutters. We did the roof later after we put a tenant in it. God, what else? There was gutters, flooring. Actually, I had a buddy do that, but we did all the trim, all the doors, all the paint. We painted the cabinets. We cleaned the place. The place was disgusting. We did some siding work, soffit work, all that kind of stuff. We burned out of that, and so when we did that, we bought the next one. So that was kind of creative, but not really. But it was for the first deal, you learn a ton, like as you go. So that was Old Alabama Road. We refinanced out of that, got more than what we put into it. I think I took 7K down to to buy it. Took 7K down, started rehab with like 5 grand, something like that. And you work on a draw system when you work with hard money. So we bought 163 Red Oak Drive. Now, this is really our first creative deal, and we actually seller financed it out. What it was, and I'll get into it because it's real. It's a real life deal. I still collect money on this deal today. Very small deal, but a very lucrative deal. And so 163 Red Oak Drive, that's in Carrollton, I think, is the city. It's kind of in between two cities. If you want to look that up too, you could. Carroll County, look it up. I held the note on that. So what we did is we bought this place. It had a mobile home on it, and it's 1 acre of land. So we bought the place, and I'll get into some of the numbers so you can actually see the payoff and stuff. We bought it for like 17K, 1 acre with a mobile home, with with a mobile home on it, with a renter in it. And we ended up removing. We ended up going through eviction or whatever. Came to an agreement. She moved out. We pulled the mobile home off, and we seller financed the entire lot. And this is a real sign that I really put in the ground, that I really wrote on, and had this sitting on the side of the road. It says seller finance, 1 acre, mobile home approved, and my cell phone number. That's real. So I love putting this kind of stuff because this is, 4 years ago, we didn't think about throwing a webinar up to say like, oh yeah, we did this deal one time. So that's real. We did something very similar to this lot. I paid like $4,700 for. It's like half an acre, if that. Mobile home approved. We were gonna put a mobile home on it. We ended up perking it, and if you don't know what perking is, it's a soil drainage test, so you can see what your septic tank looks like that needs to be put on it. If it can perk right and be affordable to put the septic tank on it. We ended up selling financing that out as well. Now, this is not a perfect deal because this guy does not pay like clockwork. And this is one thing you'll run into as a seller finance is like, you have to make sure they're paying you, or you have to make sure you're paying them. So this guy pays like once a quarter, and we have to go through a foreclosure, and I've given him a lot of opportunity, but now we have to go through the foreclosure because we did a traditional close. It's not a lease to own kind of deal. So we're not going to get into that one. But it is one that like things could go sideways, but you have to have like the attorney, and that's why a traditional close is good, and have your stuff in line so you can actually do a foreclosure and take it back. But when that happens, we'll do it again. We'll do another seller finance deal. So now you could take this model and you can apply it to any deal, period. But I really like to look at this because this is very fresh, a real deal going on. What we did, what we started with, and where we ended up. Now, like I said, this was 1 acre, and this is a real picture. This is the front of my old truck. This is the frame after we had the mobile home removed. This is real. So when we bought this thing, we paid 17K for it, and it was $550 a month is what she was paying if she paid, but she ended up paying us. We were working with her pretty good. We ended up removing the tenant, and it wasn't a traditional eviction. We just talked to her about, hey, like, we got to get you out of here. We removed her, removed the mobile home, cleaned up the yard, and we seller financed it out. And so what we did is we just put it on Facebook, and this is, if you're the buyer, you're going to see this kind of stuff too. We want to take payments, seller finance, creative deal. I can work with you. Excuse me, no credit needed, that kind of stuff. So when you're looking for deals and you see that, It's somebody who's very versed on the seller finance side, very open to creative financing. So attack that deal. Okay. So like if you see that, investigate it. We threw it up for $30,000. And I had a lot of people like, you're crazy. This is never going to work. But when you're willing to work with somebody creatively just to take payments, somebody who can't get the finances, can't get, they don't have the credit, maybe they're recovering for credit, something like that. Like those are the people that you can work with. At the end of the day, they don't really care because they're probably going to live in it forever. So financially, we paid 17 grand. We collected $5,500 in rent. We ended up kicking her out in 10 months, and we removed the mobile home, and the place was absolutely disgusting. Like, holy crap. So when you deal with this class of tenant, things come with it. So there was human feces in the carpet. There was torn up diapers all over the yard. I paid a couple of young kids to help me just clean everything up. Trash under the floor. It was ridiculous. So we ended up getting it all out. I had it graded in this area right here where where the mobile home used to sit. It's a propane tank. It has a septic tank. Funny enough, we lost it in the grading. It's somewhere down there, but not my problem. They can find it. It's not a problem. They did find it. So it cost me about $2,100 to clean it up. That was the dumpsters and a buddy of mine, taking the mobile home down. And so we seller financed out $30K sale price, $5K down, and $358.68 a month. So if you add that up, just rough numbers, we collected. We're getting paid $4,300 for an entire year for $358.68. So seller finance payments for an entire year, so about $4,300. We collected 10.5, so $5K down and $5,500 for rent, minus the $2,100 that it took to clean it up. So in say the first year, if you will, the first year of owning it and then the first year of seller finance, in 1 year, we collected roughly $12,000, a little over $12,000. So that's not exact numbers. That's just showing you like it's a cash on cash could be close to 100%. Like in a deal like this, like 50, 60, 70%. So depending on what you do, depending on how long you work with a tenant, maybe you give them a couple extra months or whatever, because you know what you're going to do. So getting through that, like this is just to show you like this is what you can collect. And I paid $17K for this, and it's paid me for 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. So, $4,300 a year in seller finance. So this is a small deal, like I said, but this is a real life deal that's still going on today. And it's a very applicable deal to anybody that either wants to buy land and build on it. You have a piece of land that you want to sell or finance out. You have a little house that you want to get rid of. This is a way you can continually collect rent without maintenance. So the next big deal, and this is where it gets juicy, is our hotel that we bought. 178 Five Points Drive. If you wanted to look that up, that is in Copper Hill, Tennessee. You can look up the real address. You can look and see that we actually own this thing, what we paid for it, the whole 9 yards. So this is what it looked like when we bought it. This is what it looked like after. Here's one of the rooms before, and here's the room after. So we put a lot of work into this thing. But just to give you an idea, and I want to talk about this deal. So I get a lot of calls about hotels in general because it's real rundown. They're struggling to finance it. What goes through your head when you see something that you want to get creatively or you want to get in a deal and you just have no idea where to start? That's generally what it is. I have no idea where to start. I don't know what to think about. And so the objective is to spread your awareness. I want to give you as much awareness as possible because there's 1,000 ways you can do this. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out what the seller goal is. And that's what we did walking into this deal. And, in a couple of slides, I'll actually walk you through like things you have to think about. So when we approach this deal, how did we find the deal? That's the first question. I have an agent that I work with in North Georgia. This was just over the line into Tennessee. So not many North Georgia agents are licensed in Tennessee. Not many agents, period, are licensed in more than one state. And she's looking around and she just sees it online and sends it to me. And she says, this 42 keys, you need to go see it. So number one, how do we find it? A broker relationship. It was listed at $1 million or maybe a little over $1 million. And we started talking, and the owner was familiar with seller finance, familiar with it. I don't know if they've ever done it before. They just were familiar with it. And I said, okay, like, what's the deal? Give me the scoop. What's going on? And I'll walk you through that in the next, I think it's the next slide over. Like, what's the scoop? What's going on? Tell me about this. Tell me about that. And they said, we have to have, everything's negotiable. We have to have $300K down. I said, okay, why? Just because they tell you that doesn't mean anything. Why? They said, we need $300K down because we're buying an RV lot on the other side of the state. I said, okay, so you're moving over there or whatever. They said, yeah. They said, but the 300 is non-negotiable. We have to have that to close the next deal. I said, okay, because they lived at the hotel. They're buying an RV lot. You know, they're going to move over there. I said, all right, so what about everything else? You got any? And they said, nope, don't care. I said, all right. So now it's just an open board, right? It's just an open template of all these things you can do. I mean, crazy. So we started going one at a time. So you want to go one at a time. Down payment first. How much do you need down? I need 300K down. Okay. That's 30%. I am not fond of a 30% down payment on seller finance. That is probably the most I would ever pay, period, on a seller finance. Anything over that, you might as well just go to the bank. So they seller finance 70%. We said, okay, now next thing is like monthly payment. So there's a couple things that play in your monthly payment. It could be your amortization, so how many years you stretch out the entire note. Your balloon, maybe they want interest, maybe they don't want interest, what your interest rate is. Do you have quarterly pays, like a, an increment that you pay on top of it, like a principal payment? All these different things you can do. You can do no payments for a year if you want, or 5 years if you want. Like, if they agree to it, okay, whatever. So we went from 300K. They said we have to have 300K. I said, okay. So that tells me if I amortize the payment over 30 years, what does my payment look like at, say, 3%? What does it look like at 8%? How much of a swing is that? Because that's a big swing. So what I did is I started at 3%. I said, okay, 3% is roughly however much a month. And I said, okay, but I want interest only for the first year. So what does that look like? All right, so I want interest only for the first year. That kind of gives me, okay, like, what's 3%? All right, so what about this? 300K down, 3% interest. You're going to get this much a month. First year interest only. So that cuts my payment down for the first year during rehab. They said, I don't know if I like 3%. What about, I think we went to 4.5 or 5, and then we come back down. And what they did is they actually offered 2 years interest only. They said, what about 4%, and I'll give you 2 years interest only. So if you don't finish the rehab in the first year and you're trying to work on stabilization, that'll help you. And I said, done. 4%, 2 years interest only. Perfect. Cool. Now, 5-year balloon. I need time to make sure I can refinance out of this thing. If rates go bananas, things happen, I've got to buy myself enough time. A lot of people are doing balloons in 2 years over the last couple of years, and they can't get out of deals. So a lot of people are losing deals just because they're being called based off the balloon. So we said 5 years. They said, done. We'll get all our money in 5 years. I'm good. And then we raise the rest of the money from investors. But what does that look like when I tell you 4%, 2 years interest only? Like, what does that look like? What does that look like yourself? Because you have to write that out. Like, you see what the cash flow would be, and then what's your debt principal or your debt payment. And so for the first 2 years on a $700,000 mortgage on a hotel, the first 2 years, the payment's $2,300 a month. Year 3 is when principal goes back in, and it goes to $3,300 a month. It's really not bad, to be honest. It's really not bad. Now, we could have made that payment smaller if we would have went to 40 years amortized, 50 years amortized. You could go to 100. I've seen it. I've seen people go 0%, 100-year am, and they said, I'm going to pay you off in 10 years because the purchase price was insane. So they said, I'm going to stretch this thing out. I'm going to go, 0% interest. And it just aligned with the goals. It sounds like a crazy deal, but it just aligned with the goals of the seller. So this is real life. This is what we pay. We currently pay $2,300 a month for the hotel. That's not including like investor debt service, but this is where we're at, $2,300 a month for years 1 and 2. So all right. So how do you approach? Like, how did we approach? And without me telling you, how do you go step by step? Okay, this is where a lot of people just stop. They have no idea. They try to text the broker, they try to text an owner, they try to make an offer over text, and it just never works that way because they have no idea. All they're doing is they're just like, I'm going to go in straight in and buy this deal. Like, I'm going to go get a deal. If it doesn't benefit the seller, it's not going to work. If it doesn't benefit you, that's not going to work. So you have to create a very good harmony between the two of you. And first things first is you're solving a problem. So you ask the seller what their goals are. So if you can't talk to the seller, you talk to the broker. And you ask the broker, what is it? Like, what is the scoop on the deal? Like, why are they selling it? What's going on with this thing? I see it's been sitting for too long. I see this, I see that. What is the deal? Just tell me, what's up? You don't have to talk a lot here. It's just, hey, give me the scoop on the deal. Like, what's going on with it? That's the most important thing. If you approach every situation with you're solving a problem, and you approach it every situation like this, it always will end, I don't want to say in your favor, but it goes well. It's not like, brokers are ignoring you and all this stuff. It goes well. You're not getting to get, you're getting to give. So you're trying to get this deal to help them out and solve the problem. So as you find out, what the deal is, and you go through it, and you kind of start talking about pricing, you start talking about this. Let's say it's $100,000 $1 million deal, and they're like, or they need the cash, or they need this, or it's a divorce, and they're going through this situation, and they need this cash out, or they just don't want to deal with it anymore. One person wants to sell it, one person wants to buy it. So like, it's just $1 million. Like, okay, well, if I went to the bank, how do I buy this $1 million deal? Always start with the bank financing. Like, is it 25% down? Is it 10% down? Is it 30% down? Is it 50% down? Whatever it is, if you go to the bank, usually commercial will be 25% down and let's say 7% interest. Let's just say. Does it make sense to go in and spend 40% down and 8% interest? No, it doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense at all unless you're doing some kind of 1031 and you can't use the bank or whatever. It just doesn't make sense. So it has to benefit you if you're going to do a seller finance deal. It has to benefit you in some way. If not, then just go to the bank, and you're just going to get it cheaper through the bank 100%. On the down payment, on the interest, on everything, it's going to be cheaper. So it doesn't make sense to seller finance. I've seen seller finance deals where they're like, I'll seller finance to you for 80% down. Like, why? That doesn't even make sense. 60% down. Why? That doesn't even make sense. So if it doesn't benefit you in some way, why do the deal? That's like anything. So it doesn't make sense to seller finance it. What does their down payment need to look like? So if you get their goals and they say, I want to travel. Okay. So you want to retire and you want to travel. That's a very common thing. But if, let's say you want to travel and it says, well, I need to buy this camper and the camper's $75K and I got to buy a truck. Like, I would buy all this stuff with the sale, camper, truck, and I want to put 6 months of reserves in the account. Okay. What does that cost? What else are you going to do with the other $900,000? Like, what, you're going to put in a money market account? You're just going to put it in, like, what are you going to do? So understanding like what their goals are, you can formulate a down payment that makes sense. And you obviously want to get like the realtor paid or whatever, but like, you can form that down payment. And if it goes way above your 30%, the 30% rule, if it goes way above that, okay, this doesn't make sense. I think I'm just going to entertain the bank, or you just move on. if it doesn't make sense for the down payment needs to be, let's say it's a $200,000 deal and they need 200 grand, you're not going to seller finance this thing. You're going to go to the bank. So understanding what their goals are will lead into how to form the down payment. After you do the down payment idea, like whatever that goal is, that deal is, whatever that number is, you'll go into your monthly payment. So let's say it's 300K down, and I've got this calculator right here. You could just go to bankrate.com. This is one I use all the time. And you could just start playing with it. And like, what does that monthly payment need to be? Like if they're traveling, if your sellers are traveling and they're like, I need $4,000 a month to pay my bills, right? Because you're not giving me the full amount, but I need cash flow every month. Like, okay, cool. What does that look like here? So you could just go over here, and I don't really ever care about interest until the very end. So don't get stuck on that. And a lot of times when you offer to somebody that doesn't really understand this, and you say something like 1% interest, they're going to be like, go screw yourself, because that's crazy. But if you don't ever talk about interest and you just look at what the monthly payment, outcome would be. So like for instance, the hotel. So $1 million, 300K down, 30 years, 4% interest, it's $3,300 a month. So if you're like, well, I need to get it lower than that for a certain reason, maybe it's got to work on the cash flow side or whatever. You just work your, loan term, maybe go to 40 years, lower your interest rate, play with those two things until you get to your number that you want to do or that you want to pay. And you'll just take that number and say, what about $2,000 a month? If that fulfills their need, there's no reason they shouldn't they shouldn't do it. And if you figure out what 2K a month is, it could be where they get stuck on the interest rate, and you just spread out the terms, spread out your years. It's not that hard. This is just a puzzle. You're just trying to put it together. So down payment first and figure out what the monthly payment would be. Then you put in the balloon. So you're not going to tell a seller, I'm going to amortize this for 50 years. They're going to be like, what in the world does that mean? And I'm not waiting 50 years to get my money. I'm sure that's like an extremely common answer that people give or response. I'm not going to wait 50 years to get my money. I'm not going to wait 30 years. That's why you have your balloon. Are you going to balloon it in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? I wouldn't recommend 1 year. I wouldn't recommend 2 years unless you really know, like you're doing a bridge loan or something. But 3, 5, and 10 is the most common. If you can get 10, that's amazing. A lot of people won't do that. So 3, 5, or 10 years, that's when they know they're going to get their money. If they can get it sooner, great. It just depends on the deal, depends on what you're doing. So when you go through this, after you start agreeing on certain things, you can start working backwards, like your down payment, your monthly payment, your balloon. Okay, well, what's your interest rate look like? What does your balloon need to be? If you're going to go 5 years interest only, you may want the balloon at 5 or 7 years because you want to pay interest only for that time. Like it helps your cash flow. So whatever's important to you, you need to figure that out as far as like what the objective is of the deal. So if your objective is, and I'm going to show you something I think is pretty cool. I've got 2 deals I'm going to talk about in a second that are really going on this week. I'm in negotiations for, not for a commercial deal, to build my personal home on some land, but I'll show you that in a second. But what is important to you? For me, if it's going to be building a house on this land, like the important thing is my balloon payment. My balloon payment does not need to be soon. My balloon payment needs to be in 3 years or 5 years, because I'm going to have to refinance out of this house, or I'm going to have to refi the land, to get the construction loan, and that's when they'll get paid. But I need the time to do that. On the hotel, if you're looking at balloon payments, at 2 years, balloon would be stupid, because you have to, knowing your exit strategy, you have to rehab the property, stabilize it. You have to refinance out of it. That is a long time to rehab it, a long time to stabilize it, and then you start the refi process. And it's not overnight that you're going to refi it. So understanding what your exit strategy is to get your balloon, it's big. Now, for your monthly payment, especially if you're buying an STR, your monthly payment, if you look at a house that's grossing $10,000 a month, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to have $3K a month in expenses, light bill, water bill, management fee. I don't know, maybe 4K a month, management fee, pest, yard, everything before debt service. And you say, okay, well, I'm going to do four grand a month. Okay, that's my expenses. And you find this deal that they're going to be creative, and they say, well, I'll tell you what, I'll sell it to you for 6K a month. You can do the mortgage. And that's what they want, cash flow. Like, doesn't make sense. So instead of saying, hey, I found this deal that grosses 10 grand a month and I'm going to have a net cash flow before debt of 6K, I'm going to go get this deal. And then they hit you with 10 grand, 6 grand a month on the mortgage, on the monthly cash flow, or on the monthly payment. Does that make sense? You got a deal that's grossing 10, you're spending 4 a month, and that leaves 6. So why would you pay 6 for mortgage? So you have to dwindle that down and make sure you have enough. You have enough cash flow, you have enough reserves, you have enough period to actually make this deal work. So put it on paper and actually go through the deal. So does it make sense? A lot of things they just don't. Some people on the first try, some people will come across and say, oh yeah, I'll sell our finance for a lot down. But then other people say, well, yeah, just give me a little bit down, but like I want that high monthly payment. They want more than what they were netting with no work. And they want, and I say more, I mean astronomically more than what they were netting. And in their mind, they're like, oh, I'm going to get away from this deal. This is amazing. But on your side, you're like stuck to it. You're like, oh, it's a creative deal. I'm going to get it with no money down or whatever. And it just doesn't make sense. So put the numbers on the paper. Exercise through this. Okay. So let's see something here. Okay. I want to talk about these two before I get into actually where to start looking for a deal. Like how to buy the next short-term rental. How to buy the next creative deal, period. If it's a hotel, if it's an apartment complex, if it's a mobile home, if it's a vehicle, anything like that, where to start. Okay. So this is a deal that is actual in my area. I've got the address here, so you could pull this up. This is for sale today. I've already started negotiations with them for creative. And this is to build my dream home. Okay. We're going to build our dream home. This is the goal. And our goal by the end of the year is to acquire the land. Now, this is 2 properties. I did not realize, except they're a day apart, that they were for sale. But I got this one sent to me from my brother-in-law, and my father-in-law sent me this one. So I pulled this one up. This is $60,000 on 1211 Asbury Road, Temple, Georgia. If you call and you try to buy this thing, I will come after you, okay? Because I'm actively in this negotiation. 60K for 3 acres. Now, that is too much in my area. It's 15K is about the most a bank will actually value this. And so in the details, when you read it, it says looking for a beautiful lot, motivated seller, 3 acres in Temple, mobile home approved, which is a plus. Septic tank, because this is a backup plan for me. Septic tank is there from the previous unit. County water now runs down Asbury Road, which is true. But motivated seller is the biggest thing here. Okay, so when I see motivated seller, I think, well, how motivated are you? What do you mean you're motivated? Like sale price, creative, like what are we talking about here? So I took this, and this has been for sale for 2 months because it's too expensive. And you don't have any other information here. There's no more information. None. So what do? You contact them. So I went in the listing. Step 1, take action. Step 1, don't just look at it and send it to all your friends. Take action. So this is a real text that I sent last Saturday to the agent, and this is his cell phone number, which I should have probably blocked out, but I'll leave this right here. Yeah, maybe that'll work. So take action. So I said, hey, this is Kyle. This was, what is this? College football kickoff day. And I texted him and said, hey, I saw the 3 acres you have for sale. I see it says motivated seller. Are they willing to be creative? I'm local. That's big around us. If they're buying land like this, it's big. So I said, I'm local. Just thought I'd throw that in there. So I started the conversation. So take action, start the convo. He said, maybe. What do you have in mind? Do not, whatever you do, Do not offer over a text message. Ever. At this early in the stage, ever. Get him on the phone. I said, are you free to chat? He said, I am now. This is Saturday, 1 o'clock, 2:19, and then 4:19. So I call him and I said, hey, what is the scoop on the land? That's all I said. What is the scoop on the land? And this is where you get your information. This is where you land your goals. This is where you land what the deal is, what they're trying to get. I mean, all of this. And this is what he says. My seller bought this in a tax sale a year ago. My seller bought this in a tax sale. So that tells me immediately he got it for a few grand because taxes on this thing are like $800 a year or something. So I know that he paid nothing for this thing. He said he really just he went through the title and the transfer and he went through everything and now he just wants to sell it. I said, cool. So I know that he's not like in a divorce, he's not distressed or anything like that. So I said, okay. So, and I've looked at tax sales. I've never actually bought one through tax sale, but we've looked at a lot of them over the years. And I said, okay, so if he can get his money back, he could buy cash flow for the next 3 years. Because in my mind, I'm like, hey, I need a 3-year balloon. Like, if it's safe for me to rebuild my house, right? And I said, okay, so would he be interested in something? I said, like the price is a little high. And he was like, I know. He knows that too. He's negotiable. So what do you have in mind? I said, well, I'm kind of thinking, first of all, I want to build my dream home on this property. I live in the area. I have family. My sister-in-law lives walking distance from here. So that's the idea. And he was like, oh, okay. So he knows I'm not going to try to flip it or build something crazy on it or whatever. So it kind of has that emotional, like he knows my reason and I understand his reason. I said, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. So what if I'm thinking, give you a few grand, like give you some money down, and he just bought cash flow for the next of 3 years, and I'll pay him off 3 years. He said, well, okay, what do you think? I said, well, I'm thinking about $5,000 down. If you tell me he bought it through a tax sale, I want to make sure he's whole. So what his goal is, like I'm here for him solving a problem. I want to make sure he's whole, so I'll give him $5,000 down, and I'm thinking something like $650 a month. He said, oh, well, $5,000 would actually make him whole and pay me. $650 a month, it's actually pretty good. I said, I know. I think so too. I said, I just need the 3 years. He said, what about the sale price? I said, I'm not really worried about the sale price right now. I said, it just has to make sense. I said, it is a little high, but it has to make sense. So when I refinance out, the bank can evaluate the land at the price. He was like, oh, I totally get it. I totally get it. Yes, I'm with you. I said, cool. Let me know. He said, I'm going to talk to my seller on Monday or Tuesday or something like that. I'll let you know. I have since followed up with him. He said, I tried to pull it off and read it, but I was looking at it before. He let his seller know on Tuesday. His seller is very interested, and he's racking his brain on it or something like that. He's getting his mind wrapped around it, and I think he's going to go for it. Freaking awesome. Done. Let's close this book up. I'll give you the $5,000. We'll move on. I will own this property. And then we can do development or whatever as we go, and then we can take our time and build this place and refinance out. So that is a real deal. Now, the next day, don't put all your eggs in one basket. The next day, I get this. They're throwing distance from each other. $150,000 for 10.5 acres or 10.33 acres. So I'm like, all right, so now what? I got this other deal. So what? Let's go for it. Now, the other deal, if I did buy it, you remember, it said mobile home approved. That's my backup plan. But this is a real deal that's for sale, literally walking distance, throwing distance from the other one. What I noticed is it was listed for sale in January. Now, understand, this is why it's important. In the next 2 slides, the number one thing is market. So figure out where you want to buy. I know this area. Okay. I know that this area should be already sold. This land should already be sold. If it's been listed since January, it should already be sold. So what does it look like from January to now? Now, I did not actually pay attention to this before I went in here and called the agent. I just saw this and I was like, that's interesting. Okay. So what do? I text the agent. Said, take action. Remember, take action, start the convo. Hey, this is Kyle Fugit. I saw 10 acres for sale in Fortenberry. Is the seller willing to be creative? So she texts back, hi, Kyle. This is Tanya. What kind of creativity are you talking about? Don't offer over text. Most important part, do not offer over a text message. Get them on the phone. Are you available for a chat? Yes, I am. Some back road on my signal, whatever. My signal might not be great, whatever. We talked. I called her. We chatted. And what was crazy is she said, you know what's insane is I have not gotten a creative offer on this yet. Now I asked her, what's the scoop on the land? What's going on? All this, same thing I asked on the last part. So what's the scoop? She said, well, it's funny you asked me that. It was for sale in January, which I saw. But then she said it went under contract for a long time with a lady that had a sale contingency. So we pulled it off the market. She never bought it. She still to this day has said, oh, I've got to buy this and I've got to sell this or whatever, and then I'll be able to buy it. For months, they've been in the sale contingency. So she said, so we just relisted it. And she said, it's crazy that I haven't received any kind of creative offer on this, but now I'm not getting any calls. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So like, tell me the scoop, like what's the seller selling it for? Oh, well, he was in a divorce. So they split the land or no, they split up. He kept the land and he was going to build on it and he decided not to. I was like, oh man, like how long ago did they divorce? She said, oh, hell, he's already remarried. So, okay. So he's just forgotten about this land. She was like, yeah, kind of. It's just some free money that's sitting out there. And I said, okay. So he doesn't really care if it sells or not, obviously. It's just sitting there. So I said, well, here's what I'm thinking. I want to build my personal home. I'm in negotiations with the lot that's close by as well. So like I'm looking and I want to make an offer on this one, but something creative. So like, what if I gave them some money down and I paid them every month? She was like, interesting. What are you thinking? I said, I don't know. I'm thinking like, and we talk about it has to align with his goals and yada, yada, yada. So what about 7,500 down, $700 a month? Now, why did I come up with 700 a month? I've bought land in the past and I know land interest around here is kind of high. I think it's like 10% or something. And $50,000 was like $650 a month or something crazy. So I just said $700 a month. That's a number you can swallow to buy, to just have land sitting there that you're going to build your dream home on. Now that's my opinion and where I was coming from. I just told her about the bullet in 3 years thing. And she was like, I actually think he'll go for that. Great. Now I got a new freaking problem. What if I buy both of these? Yeah, new problems always arise. Not really a problem, an obstacle, right? A new opportunity. So I had followed up with her. I followed up with her on Tuesday, and she said that her seller was traveling and she doesn't know yet. She texted me back this morning because I followed up with her again this morning. She said he's very interested in the seller finance offer. Can you send me an email with exactly what you're thinking? There we go. So I'm going to send the offer. So you might say, okay, Kyle, well, that's land for yourself. I want to buy an STR. Where do I go? How do I start this thing? So don't know where to start. This is the biggest question I get on the initial, like, they're looking all over the place, right? They're like, I don't even know where I look. I'm just trying to find like wholesalers and I just trying to find this and I'm just trying to find that. So you don't know where to start. The first and foremost important, I don't care where you're at, is your location. Because if you're looking all over the US for all these creative deals, you just don't care, you're going to get bit. Either that or you're never going to buy anything because you're going to find a market like, for instance, Albany, Georgia. I think it's Albany. No, it's not Albany. Was it South Georgia? I think it's Albany. You can buy a house down there for like 30 grand and they rent for like $500 a month. And it's a really good deal, but it's a horrible area. LaGrange is very similar. So, that's not Albany. That's going to kill me. Columbus, Georgia. Columbus, Georgia has properties that you could buy like next to nothing, dirt cheap. The tenants suck as well, but you can get a decent amount. Now, if I sent you that deal and you're looking in California and you're like, hell yeah, I'm gonna buy over there. You have no idea and you buy it, you're gonna regret that. Okay, so location, location, location first. Pick your market. Don't tell me I just want to buy in Florida. Cool. At least you know the state. What about Destin? What about Panama City? What about the Keys? What about Miami? Like where? Pensacola. Where in Florida? If I sent you a deal in Florida that was in J, Florida, which is where my mom lives, and it's middle of freaking nowhere, and you're looking at Miami, and you're like, oh, yeah, it's still Florida. I'm cool. You're going to get bit. Okay, so market and location first. Understand the market. Understand what the price points are. Understand what the insurances are. Understand all of that stuff. Okay. Now, once you hone in on a market, you can filter by over 180 days on anything over 180 days. This is where you kind of want to start. Like, this is where people start opening their opinions up or their options. They got a house for sale for 6 months, and at first they're like, no, this thing's going to sell. I just need this money. After the 180 days is like, people start opening their minds up, and they're like, well, if I could get like some money up front and just release this thing, I'd be happy. So people start moving into that new mindset of like, I am just ready to sell. After 6 months, the first couple of months, people are like, oh yeah, whatever, you got some showings, whatever. After 6 months, they're like, no showings. I know we have a property for sale in Blue Ridge right now, $1 million. I had a showing a month ago, thought they were going to buy it, pulled the trigger on another house, and with the rates the way they are, people are now waiting for them to come down even farther, and it's just crazy. So if you want to buy a creative deal in Blue Ridge, you just let me know. Anyways, so days on market, over 180 days, people start changing their mindset. Now, when you get into listing descriptions, like I showed you before, the motivated seller, things like motivated, seller finance, wrap, sub to, takeover, assumption, you won't really see wrap, sub to, and takeover in a realtor listing. You might see it on Facebook. If you're scrolling Facebook or fizbo.com or something like that, you may see something like that if people understand what they are. And then if you see that, you're working with somebody who understands and is vetted in that area. Most likely done it before. Assumption could be one that you see in the realtor description. So you could technically search in realtor and Zillow motivated. You could search seller finance. You can search assumption. You can search payments. Seller is behind on payments. So you can search these things as keywords and look in markets and just see if they come up, see what comes up. So let's say you find the deal and you're like, all right, I got this call with the seller. Somebody sent me a deal that's like, it's creative. They're willing to be creative. They want to get out of this thing. You say, okay, you start talking and say like, what's the reason you want to sell, right? Give me the scoop on this deal. Be wary of what a seller tells you off the bat. Always be wary. Same thing as like, you're buying a short-term rental or you want to manage somebody else's short-term rental, and you ask them what's the reason you want, somebody else to manage it or whatever. Just be wary of what they say. So usually it's the same reason. I want to do something else. I'm not really paying attention to this thing. It could make more money. Like, what's the real reason? Maybe they are going through a divorce. Maybe they're moving. They have another driving factor of why they want to get rid of this thing. Maybe the neighbors suck. It's usually because it's not making money. That's usually why people sell commercial deals or the investment cycle's over. It's time for them to move on. But people don't really say that. People are just like, oh yeah, well, it's got some value add. I'm just tired of it. If it's making top dollar, they're not selling this thing. Like, just to be honest. So depending on if you're working with a homeowner, like an actual like live-in homeowner, or if you're dealing with an investor, that will tell you kind of where to navigate, the reasoning. And if they just give you some crazy, well, I just want to focus on something else, like, oh, cool, like what else are you doing? Like, actually care, right? Like there's human nature to this. Actually show that you care ask some questions because usually you can kind of like spearhead through the crap and see what the end result, like what the actual reason is. So be wary of that. Be wary of what they tell you. I'm not saying don't believe everybody. I'm just telling you to like walk on eggshells at first. It's your first conversation. They don't know you. You don't know them. Just be honest. If they told you this place sucked and is a complete headache for maintenance, you're probably not going to buy it. So they're not going to tell you that. They just want to sell the property. Same for a realtor. Now understand, realtors, like if you come across to a realtor, there's more now, but there was a time where like hardly any realtor understood what seller finance was or creative deals. They just didn't get it. So if you offered that off the rip, they would just be like, nope, my seller's not up for that because they don't think they're going to get paid either, or they think it's a scam. So you want to make sure that the realtor understands they're going to get paid. Don't get attached to the deal. Just because somebody says it's a creative deal does not mean you need to buy it. I think I got a text like 2 days ago with a property, and it's, they said they would carry back like 90%. I just need to bring 10%. It's fully paid for. What do you think? Right? Ugliest house I've ever seen in my life. Said, okay, but it's like $600,000, and I think the comps were like 400. Like, okay, but the house is only going to rent for like $1,500 a month. Well, yeah, but I can get into this for like next to nothing. Like, yeah, you probably shouldn't buy this deal. Like, just because it's a creative deal doesn't mean it makes sense. So don't get attached to these. Or if it's, like it's a house on the coast and you're like, I want to rent, man, that thing would rent. And you got everybody telling you, oh, it's going to rent, it's going to rent, it's going to rent. But the cash flow, the price they're selling it at, like it's just not there. If you can't work it out with the seller, don't buy it. Period. Just because it's a creative deal and they're willing to be creative does not mean you have to purchase it. I'll make that very clear. Very clear. Okay. And you want to be aware of all the options you have. So could be no interest, could be no payment for 12 months. So when you start talking to them, figuring out what their goals are, like there are a lot of things you can solve here. There's a ton of things you can solve. A lot of options you can solve. Now I could go into this for like days. I could talk about seller finance stuff for days. I could tell you crazy examples and crazy deals and all this stuff. And I really, really love this topic. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into absolutely everything. That's why we made this slide, to keep me on track. Because if you know me, I go over a lot. So if you have a deal, and we're just going to cut it off because we're at the hour mark. But if you have a deal that you are really curious about, Vincent, you said you want to buy out your partner. That is creative. I've been through a lot of partnerships where people want to buy the other person out. Text me, shoot me a DM or something, and I can like talk to you. Maybe we can just jump on the phone. You can work out a payment plan with him. So like, I don't know your situation on buying your partner out. I don't know if it's a property you own together or if it's a business. I think it's a business. Could be wrong. But if that's the case and you want to like buy them out, then you can do, hey, like whatever their equity is, you could do, like a monthly payment to get them paid over, let's say 5 years or 3 years or whatever. You can have full control and sell it and pay them off. Like, just depends on what it is. You could just give them a lump sum of money, but you have to evaluate that. Maybe you give them more equity on sale, less equity on cash flow. You pay them off. There's a bunch of different ways you could do that. So just depending on the situation and what the goal is, that's what I would recommend. I mean, there's just too many options to talk about this with like one-sided. But if you have a deal, you have a partnership, you have something you want to talk about, I would 100% text me or DM me or whatever. If you're smart, you took my picture off the little sign, my phone number is the same. You can do whatever, text me, DM me, whatever, send me an email. I want you to be aware that we have, if you're not already in the Power Path, free Power Path Facebook group community, join that today. It's everything STRs and real estate. And if you're not in the Power Path actual group, shoot me a DM if you want to know more about that. And then you and I can get on a call, figure out what your goals are. But if you're a short-term rental, if you have a short-term rental business, you're looking to build or scale or start that business, that's what we do. It's a mastermind for short-term rentals. Join the free one. We're going to start doing these probably once a week. We're going to rotate topics: seller finance, listings, management, operations, whatever, everything. So I just want to add as much value as humanly possible to you guys. You guys are amazing. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm here for you, and I will see you guys later. Thank you.